I stand on the edge of history, where a single secret altered the fate of nations, a drug so powerful it turned men into machines and armies into monsters. Welcome to Forgotten History Tales. This is the untold story of the chemical madness that fueled World War II. The war didn't pause. It never does. Not for fatigue, not for doubt, and certainly not for the toll that Pervitin had begun to take. As the chaos of battle grew, so did the dependency. The drug, once a miracle, began to show its darker side, like a serpent that first appeared charming, only to slowly tighten its grip. There was no going back. I hear the muffled thud of boots against the blood-soaked earth, the persistent rhythmic noise that fills the silence of a battlefield too quiet for comfort. I feel the tension in the air, the unbearable weight that each soldier carries, not just the rifle or the pack, but the invisible burden of Pervitin's demand. They are no longer men, but shadows, pale, twitching, lost in the haze of their own minds, but still marching forward with the relentless drive of something far more mechanical than human. The sky above is gray. The wind cuts through the trenches like a knife, carrying with it the sharp scent of gunpowder and death. Their faces, blank, void of any recognition of the world around them, are glazed over, eyes unblinking, staring into nothingness. I pass a group of soldiers, their movements jerky, unnatural. Some of them are whispering to themselves, speaking in rapid, fragmented bursts. There's a tremor in their hands, but they hold their weapons tightly, never letting go. A shout rips through the silence. "Keep moving!" The orders are barked without emotion, because there is none left to be felt. Pervitin has taken root so deeply that it is now a part of their very being. They crave it, as a fish craves water. It's not just a substance, it's their lifeblood. Their dependence on it is suffocating, all-consuming. Yet, in this moment, they don't care. They march into the heart of a storm that will tear apart everything they've ever known. And they do it with a relentless drive that seems beyond human understanding. I see a soldier stumbling as he runs, his eyes wide with the terror that haunts his waking moments. He is not looking at the battlefield. No, his eyes are locked onto something in the distance, a horror only he can see, a phantasm born from his mind under the influence of the drug. And yet, he doesn't stop. He can't. His body is beyond his control, pushed by forces unseen, all for the sake of one more dose, one more fix, one more step toward a victory that no longer seems like a possibility. It wasn't just the men who were falling victim to Pervitin. The generals, too, saw its promise. The drug was spreading through the ranks faster than anyone could have imagined. Soon, every officer was aware of its power, and soon enough, they were all complicit in its use. The once cautious, methodical planning of the German military began to give way to an obsession with speed, with conquest, with the unrelenting march toward victory. But no one could predict the toll it would take. I feel the weight of the decisions that were made in those cold, clinical rooms where the drug was first handed out. They thought they were giving their soldiers the edge they needed. And for a time, it worked. They pushed through France, through Poland, through the streets of cities burning with the fury of war. But now I hear the sound of a man screaming in his sleep. Not a scream of battle, but a scream of madness. His mind is unraveling, his body no longer a reliable vessel for his will. The drugs have pushed him too far, and the very thing that was supposed to fuel his victory is now consuming him. In the trenches, a different kind of war rages, a war between the drug and the soldier. The man who takes Pervitin cannot stop taking it. There's no breaking free from its grip, no retreat to safety, no way to unsee the horrors the drug has awakened in their minds. I pass one man, his hands shaking as he reaches for his rifle, his breath ragged. He looks at me, his eyes vacant. He speaks, but it's not words. It's a slurred murmur of confusion, of dread, of a man lost in a war that no longer exists except in the jagged fragments of his fractured mind. This madness isn't confined to the soldiers anymore. The command staff sees the results, the victories that come with Pervitin's influence. They look at their soldiers, their army moving with the unstoppable force of an unfeeling machine, and they make a decision. More soldiers, more Pervitin, more speed. And so the drug flows like water, injected into the veins of a war machine that is already starting to collapse under the weight of its own creation. But there is a new player in this game, one that was never expected. As Pervitin spreads through the ranks, a darker, more insidious force begins to take shape. The Allies, too, begin to see the power of this secret weapon. They learn of the drug, and they understand what it can do. But the difference is, they don't just see the battle strategy. No, they see the aftermath. They see what happens when men are pushed beyond their limits, when they can no longer think, no longer feel, no longer control their own bodies. In secret laboratories, Pervitin's creation would spark an even darker race. The question wasn't just how to fight longer, how to win faster. The question now was, how to stop it. I hear the first whispers of a new war, a war not just fought with tanks and bombs, but with the very chemicals that fuel the mind. Pervitin has become more than just a drug. It has become a symbol of everything that is wrong with this war, an addiction to power, an obsession with victory, a race toward destruction that no one can stop. And I am left with a single, chilling thought. How much longer can it last? The soldiers keep marching. The battle keeps raging. But somewhere, beneath it all, the drug is quietly taking its toll. And now, as the war continues to burn across Europe, the madness that once started as a secret is slowly being unveiled for all to see. What began as a whispered hope for victory has now become a nightmare that no one can escape. The question, though, is not just about the drug anymore. The question is about what happens when the mind finally breaks. The war continues, but something has shifted. It's not just the sound of gunfire that fills the air now. It's the silence of men who no longer know who they are. They march, they fight, they kill. But in the hollow of their eyes, there is nothing. The battlefront has become a place where victory is no longer the end goal. It's simply the next moment of existence. The drug, Pervitin, has stolen something far more precious than just time or strength. It has stolen their souls. I take you into the ruins of a city, its streets choked with rubble and the remnants of lives torn apart. The air smells of smoke and burning debris, the remnants of a world that once was. But there is something new here, a peculiar energy, a kind of madness that has infected the soldiers moving through these streets. They march, their faces set in grim determination, but their eyes, those hollow, desperate eyes, tell a story that no words can describe. The very same soldiers who, just weeks before, would have hesitated at the sound of a woman's scream or a child's cry, now move with the cold, unwavering precision of machines. I feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me as I follow them. The tension in the air is palpable. The smell of their sweat mixes with the thick, oppressive scent of fear, both of which have become inseparable from the very fabric of this war. They no longer feel pain the way they used to. They no longer feel fear. The war has become something else, a hunger, an insatiable drive to consume, to move forward without thinking, without pausing to question what has been lost. The streets are deserted, no civilians, no bystanders. Only the occasional soldier, a few stragglers, their uniforms tattered, their bodies beaten down by both the war and the drug that has kept them going. As I walk among them, I can hear the faint murmurs of conversation. It's not about strategy, not about the enemy. They don't even talk about victory anymore. Instead, they talk about the next dose. The addiction has become a currency, traded in whispers and glances. It's not just Pervitin anymore. It's a lifeline. And in this madness, they are all too willing to sell their souls for one more hit. The officers give it out like candy, promising that it will push them farther, faster. But the price they pay is becoming too steep to ignore. I hear the screams at night, men writhing in their tents, clutching their heads, their bodies betraying them. They scream not from the pain of battle, but from the horrors that the drug has unlocked inside them. And still, the war rages on. The world spins on its axis, and history continues to march forward with a brutal, unrelenting pace. But for those who have fallen victim to the grip of Pervitin, time itself seems to stretch out, warping and distorting. It's as if the very fabric of their lives has been unthreaded and knotted into a violent spiral of addiction and destruction. The war they fight is not just against the enemy, it's against themselves. I stop for a moment, looking at one of the soldiers before me. His face is smeared with dirt, his eyes glassy and unfocused. He's holding his rifle, but it's clear he doesn't even know why. He's caught between two worlds, the one of reality, which he can no longer access, and the one that exists in his mind, distorted and twisted by the drug. There is nothing left to say to him, no orders that will bring him back to himself. He is lost, swallowed by the very thing that was meant to save him. But the generals, those at the very top, are blind to the destruction unfolding beneath their noses. They look at the reports, see the victories, and pat themselves on the back. They believe the drug is working. They believe their soldiers are invincible. And in their ignorance, they continue to push them further, demanding more, always more. The drug's grip only tightens as the war escalates, as the need for speed and victory becomes more pressing. I move through the camp, the night heavy with the murmur of men in restless sleep, their dreams twisted by the effects of the drug. There is no comfort here, no warmth in the cold that has seeped into their bones. The air smells of desperation, of men on the edge of madness, teetering between life and death, between victory and destruction. The enemy, too, is taking note. They have seen the change in the German army. They have seen the manic energy in their soldiers, the frantic pace of the battlefield. But they don't understand it. Not yet. They don't know that the thing driving these soldiers forward is not just courage or pride or patriotism. It is something far more dangerous, dependency, a dependency that will, in the end, destroy them. I hear a low growl of engines in the distance. The tanks are coming, the sound of metal grinding against the earth. They are a symbol of power, of strength. But in this moment, they seem hollow. They are just machines, like the men inside them, cogs in a war machine that knows no end, no mercy. But as the tanks roll toward the city, as the soldiers line up for the next battle, I feel something in the air, something that has shifted. It's a feeling I cannot place, but it's there, an undercurrent of dread, because the drug is not just a tool for the soldiers anymore. It's becoming a tool for the very heart of this war. The very fabric of the conflict is being changed, and no one yet knows what the cost will be. It's as if the world has stepped into a new phase of madness, a phase where victory no longer means the end of the war, but the beginning of something far worse. And so, I'm left with a chilling thought as I watch the tanks roll into the horizon. What happens when the madness takes root in more than just the soldiers? What happens when the generals, the leaders, and the entire war machine are driven by the same insatiable hunger? The question lingers, unanswered, as the smoke rises in the distance. And as the war continues to unfold, it's clear that this is no longer just a battle for territory. It is a battle for the very souls of those caught in its path. And soon, the world will see just how far the madness has spread. The world is burning. I take you into the heart of the fire, where everything is both alive and dead. The landscape is a desolate blur of smoke, ash, and scorched earth. The crackling of flames fills the air, a chorus that drowns out all else. The stench of charred flesh, oil, and the sulfuric bite of explosives claws at my senses. I can feel the weight of the destruction, an almost tangible force that presses down on everything it touches. Yet, among the ruins, the machines march on, the tanks, the trucks, the soldiers. I see them now. Men who have been transformed into shadows of themselves, walking through this hell with the same blank stare, the same unblinking eyes. They move without a thought, without hesitation, without feeling. What have they become? The drug, once a simple stimulant to keep them awake, has taken root so deeply that it now defines them. They are no longer soldiers. They are addicts, walking through the ruins of a world they've helped destroy. Their faces are a mask of exhaustion, but their bodies keep moving, driven by the hunger of the drug, that insatiable need for the next fix. The high command watches from their ivory towers, unaware, or perhaps uncaring of the madness unfolding below them. They still see the drug as a tool, a means to an end, something to be used until it's no longer useful. But the truth is, they are blind. They are blind to the suffering, blind to the men who are slowly being torn apart by what they've unleashed. I follow a group of soldiers as they march, their movements stiff and uncoordinated. They look at each other, but there is no recognition in their eyes, just a hollow emptiness, like they are ghosts walking in a world that no longer makes sense. Some of them stumble, their bodies rejecting the drug that has consumed them. Others press on, determined, desperate. I can feel the collective weight of their madness. It's like a living thing, wrapping its fingers around their throats, pulling them further into the abyss. I stop to watch one of them. He's holding his rifle, but it's not aimed at anything. His hands tremble, his body jerks in spasms, but he doesn't stop. He's been awake for days, weeks, maybe. The Pervitin has driven him past the point of exhaustion, past the point of reason. He's no longer a man, he's a machine, a tool in a war that has long since stopped making sense. And as I watch, I see the first signs of what happens when the drug is pushed too far. His eyes roll back in his head, and he collapses, his body seizing on the ground. He will be back on his feet within hours, just long enough for the drug to take hold again, just long enough for the war to continue. The sound of artillery fire rips through the air, the explosion reverberating deep in my chest. It's as if the very earth is crying out, as if the war itself is beginning to fracture under the weight of what has been done to it. But the soldiers keep moving forward. They have no choice. They have been trained to keep moving, to keep fighting, to keep winning, even when winning no longer means anything. I step back and watch as the tanks roll past, their tracks grinding against the earth with an ominous mechanical rhythm. The ground shakes with every passing moment, the earth trembling beneath the unstoppable force of the war machine. These machines, like the men who fight in them, have been twisted by the same force. They have been turned into something that no longer resembles the machines they once were. They too are slaves to the drug, slaves to the same hunger that drives the soldiers forward. But there is another force at work now. The drug, once a secret weapon of the Nazi regime, is spreading. The Allies, the ones who fought against the rise of the Third Reich, are learning of Pervitin's power. The intelligence reports begin to pour in, whispers of a chemical weapon, something that could shift the balance of the war. But the Allies, too, are blind. They see only the possibility of victory, the allure of an edge that could turn the tide in their favor. And so they begin to experiment, to use the same drug that has driven the Germans to madness. But what they don't understand is this. The drug doesn't just fuel soldiers, it consumes them. I feel the shift in the air as the war begins to change. The Allies, once hesitant to join the race for chemical power, now see no choice but to embrace it. The same soldiers who fought against the rise of tyranny are now locked in a desperate fight for their own souls. The drug has spread, and now it has become a weapon on both sides. The war is no longer about borders or ideologies. It is about survival. Survival at any cost. The reality of what is happening is beginning to set in. The men who once fought with a sense of purpose, a sense of duty, are now fighting for something else entirely. They are fighting for the next dose. They are fighting for the next moment of clarity, the next surge of energy that will allow them to keep going, to keep surviving. But what are they really surviving for? What is left of the world they once knew? I step closer to the front lines, where the soldiers are dug in, waiting for the next wave of destruction. The air is thick with tension, but it is not the tension of battle. It is the tension of men who know they are no longer in control. The war has become a fever dream, a nightmare that will not end until they have all burned themselves out. I hear a cry in the distance, a soldier alone, screaming into the void. The scream is not of pain. It is a scream of rage, of frustration, a scream born from the realization that they are trapped, that the very thing they thought would save them has now become their chains. The drug has taken its toll, and there is no escape. The war will not end. Not for them. Not for anyone. As I look around, I know that the madness has only just begun. The drug has seeped into every corner of this conflict, and the soldiers, the men who once fought for honor, for country, for freedom, are now nothing more than pawns in a game they can no longer understand. The war has consumed them, and soon it will consume everything. But the question remains, how much longer can they hold on? How much longer can the world survive this madness before it breaks? The sound of footsteps in the distance tells me the answer. The war is no longer just a clash of armies. It has become a storm, wild, uncontrollable, and relentless. I take you into the heart of it, where the air is thick with smoke, the sky a constant swirl of gunfire and explosions. The ground trembles beneath my feet, and I can hear the distant rumble of the battlefront as it unfolds in all its chaos. The soldiers, what's left of them, are caught in the current, carried along by the force of a war that has long since abandoned any semblance of reason or purpose. I feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. This is not a battle for victory. This is a battle for survival. The war has twisted itself into something darker than anyone could have imagined. The drug, Pervitin, is no longer a tool. It is the beating heart of this conflict. The soldiers are no longer fighting for their country. They are fighting for the next dose, for the next moment of clarity, for the fleeting rush that keeps them going, even as the world around them collapses into madness. I watch as a group of soldiers marches past me, their eyes vacant, their movements stiff. They are not men anymore. They are puppets, their strings pulled by a force greater than themselves. The war machine grinds forward, unstoppable, but at what cost? These men are no longer soldiers. They are addicts. Addicts to the drug, addicts to the fight, addicted to the rush that keeps them from facing the truth. There is no honor in this war anymore, no glory, only the cold, unfeeling hunger for more. The generals, too, have become part of the madness. They see the drug as a tool to win, but they have no idea what it has truly done. They see the results, the victories, the speed, the unyielding march of their army. But they cannot see the toll it has taken on the very souls of their soldiers. They cannot see the men breaking under the weight of the addiction, the hallucinations, the terror that grips them when the drug wears off. I walk through the camp, past soldiers who have collapsed on the ground, their bodies twitching and convulsing as the drug slowly begins to leave their systems. The ground is littered with empty vials, discarded syringes, silent reminders of the price they've paid. The officers move about, barking orders, but there is no passion in their voices, no fire. They have all become part of the same machine, a machine that has no room for human weakness. I hear the cries of soldiers in the distance, screams of terror, of confusion. But there is no one left to help them. The war has consumed them, and now it's consuming everything else. The drug has taken root, not just in the soldiers, but in the very fabric of the war itself. It's a plague, spreading faster than anyone can control. But as the war rages on, something shifts. The generals, those who have been blind to the true cost of their decisions, begin to notice the cracks. They begin to see the men who are no longer able to fight, the soldiers who have collapsed under the weight of addiction. They hear the whispers of the allies, who are now aware of the drug's power and its destructive potential. They realize, too late, that Pervitin is no longer a weapon. It is a curse. But even now, it is too late to turn back. The war has become too entrenched, too far gone. The drug has seeped into the very heart of the conflict, and there is no way to remove it. The soldiers are no longer fighting for their country, for victory. They are fighting for something far more dangerous. They are fighting for control. Control over their bodies, control over their minds, control over a war that has spiraled out of their hands. I feel the weight of this truth in my chest. The drug is not the cause of the madness. It is the fuel. The cause lies deeper, in the hearts of the men who created it, in the blind ambition of leaders who saw only the power of victory and never the cost. The soldiers, the generals, they are all complicit in the madness. They are all trapped in a cycle that cannot be broken. And as the war continues to tear apart everything in its path, I can't help but wonder, how much longer can they hold on before the madness consumes them entirely? The answer, I fear, is already written. The drug is not just a tool of war. It is a reflection of the very soul of this conflict, and the soul of this war is already lost. The soldiers no longer know why they fight. The generals no longer understand the stakes, and the world is left to pick up the pieces. I hear the distant sound of tanks rolling forward, the heavy rumble echoing through the air. But it is no longer the sound of progress. It is the sound of something far more terrifying, the sound of a war machine that has long since lost its humanity, a machine that will keep grinding forward no matter the cost. As the tanks approach, I feel the weight of the question that has been hanging in the air for so long. How much longer can they hold on? How much longer before the war breaks apart entirely, consumed by the very thing that was meant to keep it alive? And as the first shots are fired, I realize the answer. It will end only when there is nothing left to destroy. The war, once a grand, horrific spectacle of strategy and conquest, has now become something far more personal, more insidious. I take you into the heart of it, where the lines between soldier and addict have blurred beyond recognition. The battlefront is no longer defined by maps or objectives. It's defined by the frantic, desperate need to survive, not just the war, but the grip of the drug that holds them tighter than any enemy's hand. The drug, Pervitin, has become the true enemy, the one that no one can fight, because it is inside them, coursing through their veins. The battlefield is a place of madness. The air is thick with smoke and the unmistakable scent of blood. But there's something else, something more tangible: desperation. The soldiers stagger through the wreckage of cities they've conquered, their eyes hollow, their minds lost in the haze of addiction. They march forward, but they do not know why. Victory is no longer a goal. Survival at all costs, is the only thing that matters now. I stand in the midst of it all, watching the soldiers as they stumble, their movements jerky, their eyes glazed over. They are not men anymore. They are the walking dead, caught in a cycle that they cannot escape. The drug is their master, and they are its slaves. They do not feel the pain of the war around them. They do not feel the weight of their weapons or the sting of bullets. They only feel the hunger, the craving for the next dose, the next hit, the next moment of clarity before the madness returns. I move through the camp, past tents where soldiers lie on the ground, shaking in their sleep, their bodies racked with tremors as the drug slowly fades from their systems. The air is filled with the low murmur of their voices, speaking in half sentences, barely coherent. Some of them cry out in their sleep, shouting for their mothers, for their comrades, for the war that has taken everything from them. They are no longer fighting for victory. They are fighting for something they can't name, something that has become as much a part of them as their own breath. The officers, too, are not immune. They give the orders, pushing their soldiers forward, but even they are beginning to feel the strain. They are aware of the cracks in their ranks, the men who are no longer able to fight, no longer able to think. But they push on, driven by the same hunger that has consumed their soldiers. The hunger for power, for control, for the illusion of victory. They think they can control the war, but they can no longer control the men they've created. The drug has taken care of that. I stop and look around. The sound of a distant explosion shakes the ground, but it barely registers. The world is becoming numb, the edges of reality blurring. The soldiers don't hear the explosion. They don't hear the cries of their fallen comrades. They don't hear anything but the beat of the addiction in their heads, the constant pulse of their need for the drug. It has drowned out everything else. In the distance, I see a medic kneeling over a soldier, his face pale, his hands trembling. The soldier is barely conscious, his body twitching as the drug begins to leave his system. The medic looks up at me, his face filled with frustration and helplessness. He knows what is happening, but there's nothing he can do. The drug is too powerful, too ingrained in the system. The soldiers are beyond saving. They have crossed a line, and now there is no way back. I feel a deep, suffocating sense of hopelessness settle over me. The soldiers, these men who once had a cause, a reason to fight, are now reduced to nothing more than cogs in a machine that is grinding itself into oblivion. The generals, the officers, the high command, none of them can see the truth. They still believe they are in control. But they are not. The war is no longer in their hands. It is in the hands of the drug. The battlefield is a nightmare, but it is not just the violence that defines it. It is the madness that the drug has wrought. The addiction has taken hold of everything. There is no room for honor, for strategy, for thought. There is only the need for the next dose, the next hit, the next moment of clarity before the walls close in again. As I walk among the soldiers, I hear the whispers. They are speaking of the drug as if it is their only companion, their only friend. It has become more than just a means to an end. It has become a lifeline. The officers are no different. They too have fallen victim to the allure of the drug. They too have become slaves to the power it gives them. But what they don't realize is that this power is an illusion. They are not in control. They are merely puppets, dancing to the tune of a force far greater than themselves. I stop in front of a soldier who stands alone, his back against a ruined wall. He's staring at the horizon, his face unreadable. His hands are clenched around his rifle, but it is not aimed at anything. It is just a part of him now, a part of the armor he wears to protect himself from the world. He doesn't speak, but I can see the conflict in his eyes. He knows what he has become. He knows that the war has taken him, body and soul, and yet he cannot stop. This is the heart of the war now. This is the reality. The soldiers are not fighting for victory. They are fighting for survival, but survival has become a twisted, distorted thing. They are not fighting for their country, for their families, for their comrades. They are fighting for a hit, a dose, a moment of clarity, before the madness consumes them completely. And as the sun sets, casting long shadows over the battlefield, I am left with one haunting thought. What happens when the last dose is gone? What happens when the drug runs out and the soldiers are left with nothing but the wreckage of their minds? The war is winding down, but the madness refuses to let go. I take you into the final days of a conflict that has consumed everything. The once vibrant world has become a fractured reflection of itself. The smoke still hangs in the air, a haze that clings to everything, even the soul. The soldiers who have marched through years of unrelenting chaos are now caught in the ruins of their own making, and I can feel it, the weight of a history that is about to collapse under the strain of its own lies. The drug is still with them, still embedded deep in their veins, even though its supply is dwindling. I hear whispers in the camp, voices that tremble with fear. The drug, once their savior, has become their prison, and now that it is running out, the reality of what they have become is beginning to sink in. They are no longer soldiers. They are addicts, and when the last dose is gone, what is left? What remains when the clarity of the drug fades, and they are left with only the wreckage of their minds? I watch as the men stumble through the camp, their eyes empty, their bodies weak. The drug has taken so much from them, but it has also given them something. It has given them the illusion of power, the illusion of invincibility, the illusion of survival. But now that illusion is crumbling, the war is ending, and the drug is no longer enough to keep them going. They know this, and it terrifies them. In the distance, I hear the sound of artillery fire. The final push is underway, the last act of a war that has already claimed so much. But it no longer matters. The soldiers, even in their final moments, are not fighting for victory. They are fighting for their fix, for the escape, for the clarity, for the release that they can no longer find. Their bodies are failing them, their minds are breaking, and yet they press on. They have no choice. I step closer to a group of soldiers huddled in a corner of the camp. They are whispering to each other, their voices hushed, frantic. One of them holds a small vial in his hands, the last remnants of the drug, and I can see the desperation in his eyes. He knows what this means. This is their final chance. The others watch, wide-eyed, as he prepares to inject the last of it into his arm. They are like ghosts, their faces pale, their movements slow and mechanical. There is no humanity left in them, only the need for more. The soldier plunges the needle into his arm, and for a brief moment, his eyes light up. The drug takes hold, just for a second, and he straightens up, a faint smile crossing his face. But it doesn't last. The high is fleeting, and in its place comes the crushing weight of what they've done. The drug has stolen so much from them, and now it is leaving them with nothing. I step back, my stomach turning at the sight. The soldiers are not just fighting a war anymore. They are fighting themselves. They are fighting the drug, the addiction, the madness that has consumed them. And when the last of it is gone, when the final dose has been taken, what will they be left with? A generation of men, broken, lost, and forever changed by the very thing that was supposed to save them. The war is ending, but there is no victory here, no glory, no sense of accomplishment, just the hollow echo of a conflict that has taken everything. And as the last shots are fired, as the final explosions reverberate through the air, I realize something that has been building in my chest for days. This war has no end. Not really. It ends when there is nothing left to fight for. When the soldiers are gone. When the drug has stripped away every last vestige of humanity. When the world is nothing but a broken shell of what it once was. I hear the distant hum of the planes flying overhead. The sound is not one of triumph, not one of victory. It is the sound of an empire collapsing, the sound of a world unraveling. The soldiers are not marching for glory anymore. They are marching because they have no choice. They are marching because they are too far gone to stop. I take one last look at the soldiers, at the men who have been caught in this web of addiction, who have lost everything to the war and to the drug that fueled it. And I wonder, what happens when the drug is gone? What happens when the war is over, but the madness lingers? The answer is simple. The war never truly ends. Not for them, not for anyone. Because when the last shot is fired, when the last dose is taken, there is only one thing left to do: survive. But survival in this world is a hollow victory. It is a victory built on the ashes of everything they once believed. And it is a victory that leaves them with nothing but the broken pieces of their minds and their bodies. As the dust settles and the war fades into history, I am left with one final question. What happens when a generation of men is lost to madness? The war may be over, but the true cost has only just begun. The war is over, the fighting has ceased, and yet the world is still consumed by the echo of its violence. I take you into the aftermath, where the silence feels as deafening as the explosions that once rocked the earth. The war has ended, but the scars it has left behind are deep, invisible, and permanent. The soldiers have returned to what remains of their lives, but there is no return to normalcy. There is no healing. There is only the void. I walk through a village that has been ravaged by war. The buildings stand like tombstones, their broken windows staring blankly into the sky, as if they too are lost in the same confusion that haunts the men who fought here. The air is still thick with the smell of destruction, of death, of decay. The once vibrant colors of life have been bleached out by the dust of battle, and in their place is a gray world of ruin. The land is scarred, the earth itself a reflection of the soldiers who fought on it. They too have been changed beyond recognition. I look at the men who have returned, the survivors, those who were not consumed by the madness, those who still walk among us. They are shadows of the men they once were. The drug, Pervitin, has claimed them, even if it is no longer in their veins. The addiction, the hunger for the high, remains. It lingers in their eyes, in their posture, in the way they move through the world as if they are still marching, still fighting a war that ended long ago. But the war is not over for them. Not really. It is a part of them, woven into their very being. They wake in the middle of the night, haunted by nightmares of battlefields that never fade. They flinch at loud noises, at sudden movements, at anything that reminds them of the chaos they endured. And when the nightmares pass, when the ghosts of their past subside, they are left with the emptiness of their addiction. They crave the rush, the clarity, the escape. But there is no escape. The war has ended, but the drug has left its mark, its shadow still hanging over them. I see one soldier sitting alone, his hands trembling as he looks at the remnants of his rifle, now long discarded. His face is vacant, his eyes searching for something he cannot find. The world has moved on, but he has not. He is stuck in a moment that no longer exists, a moment where the drug was his only companion, his only sense of control. Now, without it, he is adrift, lost in the wreckage of his mind. The generals, the officers who once controlled the tide of battle, are no different. They have returned to their offices, their positions of power, but their minds, too, are broken. They see the men they created, the soldiers they turned into monsters, and they are filled with a quiet dread. They know they are responsible. They know that the drug was not just a tool for victory, it was the beginning of their downfall. But there is no turning back. They cannot undo what has been done. I feel the weight of history pressing down on me. The war has ended, but its effects are still unfolding. The soldiers, the men who fought, who suffered, who died, they will never be the same. They will carry this with them forever. The addiction, the violence, the madness, it is part of who they are now. And the world, in its rush to move on, cannot understand what they have been through. They cannot comprehend the true cost of the war. They cannot see the brokenness beneath the surface. But I see it. I feel it in the air, in the eyes of the men I pass, in the empty stares of those who once fought for something greater than themselves. They thought the drug would give them power, would give them control. But instead, it took everything from them. It took their minds, their bodies, their very souls. The war may be over, but the madness lingers. It lingers in the soldiers who return to broken homes, to empty lives, to a world that no longer has a place for them. It lingers in the generals who know the truth, but can never speak it. It lingers in the world itself, in the way we look at history and think we understand it, when the true cost has never been fully acknowledged. The war, the drug, the addiction. It has all been swept under the rug, as if it were just another footnote in a history that is too painful to confront. But I refuse to let it be forgotten. I refuse to let the story of the soldiers, the men who were consumed by the drug, be lost in the shadows of history. They are not just victims of war. They are victims of something far greater, something that reached into their very hearts and minds and left them broken. The war has ended, yes, but the cost of it has not. And so, as I stand in the midst of the ruins, I am left with the haunting question that has lingered since the beginning of this journey. What happens when a generation is consumed by madness? What happens when a war, a drug, a hunger for power leaves behind only empty shells of men? The answer is simple, but it is a truth too painful to accept. The war never truly ends. It lives on in the minds of those who fought it, in the souls of those who were lost to it, in the empty eyes of the men who once held the power to shape the world. And that, my friends, is the true cost of victory.